So I would like to warmly welcome you on our third Nightingale Challenge webinar. Today we will be talking about the bullying at the workplace. We think that this topic was for such a long time hidden behind the curtain, and it is time to make come out and start to talk about it much more than since today. I'm Michaela Popelkova. I'm YCN co-chair, and I used to be the unit manager of oncology inpatient unit and daily chemo unit in Motol University Hospital in Prague in the Czech Republic. And nowadays we are located in the North Carolina in USA, and I am preparing for my test for future job. I am here today with Nikolina Dodlek. Nikki.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to our third webinar, Standing Up Against Bullying. I'm Nikolina Dodlek. I am EONS Executive Board Member and EONS Young Cancer Nurses Co-Chair. And I'm really happy to see you in this big number attending this webinar. Michaela will now present you some questions, which we will discuss at the end.
Yeah, because we would like to have our webinar more interactive, and we would like to know your opinion about this topic. So before we start with the speaker's presentation, we would like to ask you to participate in our little questionnaire on Mentimeter. You can join by these QR codes or by the links, which will be in 1 minute in the chat box. And at the end of this webinar, we will see your results about your opinions.
Okay, so our first speaker this evening is Ms. Tolulope Oludare. She is a cancer nurse who has Master Science diploma and big interest in nursing research in several fields, as mHealth, self-management, sexual health, and also genetics. She received several awards during her studying and also volunteered in several nursing programs. She currently works as a registered nurse in Scotland University Hospital in Monklands and has conducted a study about bullying and violence in the workplace. So, Tolulope, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nikolina. Good day, everyone. I am Tolulope, and today we'll be talking about bullying and violence in the workplace. So I'm sure we all have the Mentimeter links already to describe what bullying means to us. But first and first, I'll just like to give a brief description of what bullying is. So bullying refers to an aggressive behavior towards an individual that has power over the victim, and it's usually constant and it's usually repetitive and intentional. And bullying can occur in several places. It can occur in the cyberspace, it can occur in the school, and it can also occur in the workplace. When bullying occurs in the workplace, it's called bullying in the workplace, and several times in the literature have been used interchangeably to describe bullying in the workplace. And we've got terms like workplace violence, incivility, aggression, harassment, mobbing, hostility, horizontal violence, nurses eating their youngs, and things like that. So a key point to note in bullying is that there's usually a power difference between the bully and the victim. But we find out that in the workplace environment, this is usually not the case, because people who are even at the same employment level with you, or not even at the same employment level with you, could display aggressive behavior. So a term I would like us to look at would be workplace violence. And workplace violence refers to any sort of aggression whatsoever that is directed towards nurses in relation to their work, which could be physical, this could be verbal, it could be psychological, it could be sexual, and it could lead to a detriment to their health. For this presentation, I will just be using the word violence and bullying interchangeably. And there are several forms of bullying in the workplace, and verbal violence have been reported to be the highest form of as high as 82%. And it's could occur in the form of shouting at an individual, smearing an individual's reputation, gossiping, and the likes like that. And it could be physical, which could involve slapping, throwing punches, could even be to the extreme of firing gunshots. And it could be sexual in the form of inappropriate touches, inappropriate advances. It could be psychological in the form of microaggression, isolating an individual and dismissing an individual's suggestions in the workplace. And it could be lateral or horizontal. And when it's lateral or horizontal, this is what's commonly found between employees at the same employment level. So it could be between colleagues from nurse to a nurse. And it could be an hierarchical violence. And in this place, that's where we see much more of bullying. And it could be from somebody, most times it's from somebody in power. So it could be from a team leader to a team member. It could be from the charge nurse. It could also be from somebody in the management level. Well, there are several causes of several people that perpetrate this violence and bullying in the workplace. And there is people that have been reported to, as a cause of violence in the workplace is patients, with that higher 79% recorded. And it could also be from supervisors, it could be from other nurses, it could be from physicians, it could be as a result of even transference of aggression as a result of a conflict between the physician and patient to the nurse. It could also be caused by politicians, other healthcare workers, even the domestic staff. It could be due to intra or interprofessional rivalry. It could be as a result, it could come from the patient's relatives or the public at large. And several factors have been shown to predispose nurses to violence, bullying in the workplace. And it's been shown that younger nurses are more likely to be bullied in the workplace due to their age. And people also from minority, ethnic, or religious group could be bullied, and in the sense that they could just be isolated and segregated. And also the personal characteristics of the nurse, so nurses with low empathy levels and negative affectivity are also likely to be more bullied or be a perpetrator of bullying in the workplace. And nurses with less work experience, so a nurse who is new to an area, who doesn't know how things operate in the area, could be bullied around by her colleagues and other people working there. And also improper professional communication behaviors in the workplace, and working in units that are quite busy. So working in emergency departments, working in pediatrics unit and in an oncology department and the ICU department also can predispose a nurse to bullying in the workplace. And also we understaffing and work overload. I'm sure in each and every one of us workplace, we are usually short-staffed because understaffing is an issue now, a prominent issue in nursing. And when we get to that point in a shift where the workload is too much and everybody's just on the edge and getting at each other's neck, so that can also predispose one to bullying or violence in the workplace. And unrealistic patient expectations, long waiting or treatment time when the patient expects you to do so much for them, but really there's really little or nothing you could do to salvage the situation. Inefficient organization management in that sense also that there are no policies against workplace violence, and even if there are policies, they are not being implemented. And when nurses report a case of bullying, they're just being dismissed or not being followed up. So that could also just give a permissive attitude towards bullying in the workplace and just allow this menace to persist. Now we'll just take a brief look at the burden of bullying in the workplace. High prevalence rates that have been recorded across the globe, and as high as 3%. And it's known that healthcare professionals generally are threatened by workplace violence, but nurses are the most susceptible group because they are 3 times more likely than other professionals to be victims of bullying in the workplace. And this is coming up as an emergent public health problem that needs to be addressed. And no matter your rank or your office or what you do, every nurse is faced with bullying in the workplace because it's been reported across student nurses, graduate nurses, nursing within their first year of working, even charge nurses. So every nurse is faced with bullying in the workplace. And this is a violation of the nurse's basic human rights because normally no human being should be a victim of bullying. And it's a great assault to the healthcare sector in the sense that a nurse that is being bullied is not going to be happy at work. So she's not going to deliver the care that she's supposed to give to the patient up to standard. And this affects the delivery of effective healthcare and can lead to poor patient outcomes. And we've seen across the globe that there are shortage of nurses worldwide. And the major factor that's been implicated to cause this shortage is the constant issue of bullying in the workplace against nurses. And it's actually cost a lot to recruit a nurse, to train the nurse, and to retain the nurse. And this costs millions of dollars to the healthcare sectors. And this is a huge financial burden on the healthcare sector. And with the global goal of achieving universal health coverage by the year 2030, the International Council of Nurses posits that countries who are affected by this shortage of nurses due to bullying and the likes are unlikely to achieve this goal. So we really need to do so much to address this menace. And we all know that the effects of bullying are never nice, and it's quite bad because it leads to poor patient outcomes. It leads to poor physical and mental health among nurses. It could lead to suicidal thoughts, suicide, hospital admission, increased depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, loss of life, and the likes like that. And it also leads to burnout. And last webinar, the webinar 2 was on burnout and building resilience. And it also leads to reduced job satisfaction and hostile work environment, and it could lead to decreased professional quality of life for a nurse who sets out young in her life with a goal to save lives, and a few years into the profession, she's already been threatened and been scared to go to work because she's going to be bullied, and she decides to just opt in for an early retirement or just resigns, and that's not good enough. And also could lead to negative attitude towards the nursing profession, with the nurses constantly regarded as a scapegoat of the healthcare environment. And when anything goes wrong, even with other professions, everything still comes down and boils down to the nurse, which should not be so. And it also leads to loss of career and loss of job, and it leads to increased intention to leave and turnover rates in the healthcare sector. Now, with all this being said, a key thing we need to focus on is standing up against bullying. And one key thing is for each and every one of us to promote a bully-free environment, a bully-free health working environment, in the sense that there should be zero tolerance policies against bullying. It should not just be on paper. There should be active strategies put in place to ensure that these policies are actually being implemented. And with the focus always been on patient care and patient satisfaction, I think it's time also we try to balance it out to also with workers' satisfaction, and workers' health also should be of great concern to the management. And also there should be support for victims of violence. Victims of violence should not just be dismissed, their case should not be disregarded, should be followed up, and they should be given the adequate support with appropriate disciplinary actions for perpetrators of this violence. And we should encourage an organization culture that promotes a healthy work environment where everyone can say what's on their mind. And when you have a grievance against somebody, you present it in a manner that is quite polite, and the other person will be able to see from your perspective instead of letting our emotions get the better part of us. And there should also be comprehensive reporting mechanisms for violent cases and accurate security personnel at all times in the hospital. It's been noticed that most times at night times, there's usually reduced security personnel, and this should not be the case because the healthcare sector is a sector that provides 24/7 services. So there should be adequate security personnel both at daytime and at nighttime. And there should be in-service training for nurses and for other professionals, even patients, on the causes of violence, its prevention measures, and on anger management and proper communication within a professional environment. And the public also needs to be sensitized about workplace violence and its dangers. Well, in conclusion, we've seen that this bullying and violence in the workplace has constantly been behind the curtains, and it's been ignored over time by governments and organizations, with them having little or no interest in addressing the problem, and this should not be the case. And we even see that we've said that it's quite prevalent in the healthcare environment, but looking into it, we see that even what we see doesn't capture the extent to which this menace has eaten deep into the healthcare sector, because most times nurses don't even report violent cases because they feel, well, nobody's going to do anything about it, nobody's going to check it, I'm just going to be left on my own. So we really need to look into this. And two themes that come up constantly as preventative measures against bullying in the workplace has been education and policies. But despite this being shown, we've not seen any visible decrease in the violence or bullying in the workplace. So this calls for urgent action by all relevant stakeholders, including nurses themselves, the government, the researchers, the policies, the educators, and even the public at large to really look into dealing with this problem. And that's the end of my presentation. This is the references for the reading. And if you've got any questions, you could just put it in the chat box or send it to my mail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tolulope, for your very interesting and important presentation. We will have some time later for the questions. So I would like to announce our second speaker this evening, EONS President, Johan de Munter. Welcome, Johan. Johan has graduated as a nurse in 2001 and has 2 postgraduate qualifications as a nurse specialist in pain management and in oncology. Johan is currently working as a nurse manager at University Hospital Ghent at Oncology Department. And his professional interests include patient education, supportive care, survivorship, and adolescents and young eye care. He is president of the chemotherapy working group in the Flemish Society and also vice president of the Belgian Hematology Society Nurses Committee. So welcome, Johan.
Thank you very much, Nikolina. And sorry we were a little bit late on this webinar because there seems a technical problem and Jill Morgan and I were in a different link. And if it's talking about standing up against bullying, we felt a little bit left out, of course, at that moment, but we are trying to get in, so no problem. So I will share my screen. So thank you very much for inviting me, I think, on this interesting topic, and that's still occurring against among cancer nursing. And congratulations for the organizers to organize this. And if you're talking about bullying, I think this was an article I found on social media, and it was very recent. In the 18th of October, this was launched. And it says like 1 or 3 healthcare workers are afraid to report their boss for bullying due to the fear of repercussions. So this is a very important thing. And according to this recent study, 1 of 1,000 employees conducted by this culture shift, more than half, like 52% of healthcare workers have experienced bullying. So that's half of the healthcare working force is experiencing bullying, harassment or discrimination in the workplace. This report also highlighted that 48% of healthcare workers have had mental health challenges because of toxic workplace behavior. So this is very much, people. And 42% say that bad workplace culture has impacted their productivity, and 32% have had to take off time doing an incident surrounding bullying, harassment, or even sexual misconduct. Of those in the industry, they say, or surveyed, 48% also admit to having had mental health challenges because of toxic workplace behavior. But also this data revealed that almost a third, 31% of healthcare workers would not report a case of bullying inflicted by, for example, a colleague or a senior colleague during the fear of penalization or professional repercussions. So wherever you work, people should have a number of basic professional assurance in the workplace and a basic right to treat it with respect, and have the right to expect colleagues to behave with respect to each other, treat people with dignity, and work and thrive in an environment of psychological and physical safety. Unfortunately, the evidence is clear. We need to stop this, as a happy and supported workforce is a productive one and a profitable one. So no one should carry the burden of some else toxic behavior when they are trying to deliver the best of them, and on personal and professional level. So I think this was a wake-up call again to talk about this topic and to put it in the picture. So nurses in the profession call it, like, for example, eating our young, and some consider it as like integrated in the workplace culture or healthcare. It could be for some it's a rite to passage for young nurses, or an inevitable fact of a nursing career. But in no matter how it is explained, there is no place for bullying in healthcare. So bullying takes a heavy toll on the victim, on healthcare teams, and on the organization, and even on our patients in care. So the nurse bullying phenomenon is well documented in the clinical and even in leadership literature. It starts early, and it presents it starts in the nursing classroom to the bedside, and it's going on also in the boardroom. So there was one study showed that over 6-month period, 78% of students experience bullying in nursing school, and that's major. In another study, over half of nursing students reported experiencing nurse-on-nurse bullying during their clinical rotations. So this is something we give to our students. This is not a present, this is a severe issue. And also we see in the first 6 months that 60% of nurses leave their first job during behavior of their co-workers on toxic behavior. So, and at this current time, when we have a lack of healthcare professionals, we can't afford that 60% of nurses leave their first job by this toxic behavior or ourselves or colleagues. So nurse bullying occurs in almost all care settings and units. So from patient floor to executive suite. And there was also a study that 60% of nurse managers, directors, and executives, it was in 2018, a study said that they experienced bullying in the workplace, and 26% considered bullying very severe. So that are massive numbers, I think, and we have to take attention for it. So if we look at this current and future challenge in healthcare, we know there's a general nursing shortage and recruitment barriers. They're also already there because the job is hard. We have also occupational safety issues. There's occupational and patient safety during the job. There is an increased risk of burnout and dropout, and especially now with the global pandemic is also putting that measures into it. But we also see that bullying is more likely to occur in a high stress setting and high-tech outcomes, heavy workloads, and low job autonomy, all part of the nursing profession and healthcare in general. As it for the job is not stressful enough, bullying is bringing major additional pressure to all workforce and professional performance, team performance, and patient care. And therefore, if we don't look out for this, this could be a vicious circle that's always coming back. If we put bullying in place, the general nursing shortage will drop. We have increased patient and occupational safety issues, then we have more increased risk of burnout and dropout, and then we are in a vicious negative circle. But even worse, nurses who love their job and who are able to handle the physical and mental demands can be driven out by this toxic work environment. So addressing the problem requires total commitment at every point in healthcare ecosystem, from the individual level, from nurses to other healthcare professionals to organizational level, and including policy and advocacy for prevention on it. So if we're talking about barriers to report, and we see that people, 30% didn't want to go back and to report because they were afraid to do this. And what could be barriers to reporting? First of all, I see that massively is the belief that bullying incident was not serious enough to report. I think every incident about bullying is important enough to report. Also, the belief that reporting bullying will not change the current system or decrease the potential for future incidents of bullying. So people believe that the system will not work and therefore they don't report. There's also a culture that considers workplace bullying as part of the job. So it's like really accepted that there is bullying in the workplace. I think we never can accept this. And for example, when I recall my student time, it was like said, like, for example, if you go into operation room, yeah, it is normal, they freak out and they're throwing with materials. If somebody is not doing what they want to do, I think that is not normal. And that is something we should stand up against. I like an agreement on definition of bullying so that people is related to education on what is bullying and what is harassment in nursing. And the perception that workplace bullying incidents are routinely. That is also something we have to work away. But also there are like fear of being accused on inadequate performance or being blamed. So the repercussions, like they already said. And also the fear of reporting supervisory workplace bullying, of course, by the manager or the head of the service. The lack of awareness on reporting a reporting system. Some people don't know where they have to go or where they can find the system or use the system to report on this bullying. So it could be also the lack of manager and employment support, that people don't believe in it or they don't have any support by their manager. Also the lack of education and training related to reporting and managing workplace bullying. So, and also practice of not reporting unintentionally bullying. Even that is important to report. And reporting is not always blaming or to point to somebody, but to look together to a solution and to work it away. But also we have some new challenges, and I think as we are more and more on social media and working with social media in nursing, it's a digital world. The social media, text messages, WhatsApp groups, and online forums have expanded the scope of bullying. And this includes direct harassment or bullying as well as indirect harm. And therefore, it's important that we also think about these policies. And if we look at it, what we can do, for example, in social media, and if you are a victim coming of online bullying or harassment, I think the most important thing is like you want to document this. And this is very important, is taking screenshots. That is taking the facts so you have something afterwards to work with. But also, if you see, because we are all together in social media and in nursing, for example, in a WhatsApp group, if you're on the ward and you have a WhatsApp group and something is happening, you can also act as a bystander, as a colleague. So then is responding is very important. You take also that screenshot, but you have other things you can do. And this is already documented. You can make the choice to actively and visibly take a stand against bullying or harassment here, also on social media. And this is developed all the 5 Ds or different methods you can use to support somebody who's been harassed. Emphasize that harassment is not okay, and demonstrate to people in your life and workplace that they do have the power to make our communities and workplace safer. So what you can do is, for example, distract, and it's the idea to ignore the harasser and engage directly with the person who is being targeted. Don't talk about the harassment or bullying, instead talk about something completely different you can do. You can also delegate, and delegate is when you ask for assistance, for a resource, for help from a third party. But also you can directly engage, and you may want to directly respond to the harassment by naming what is happening or confronting the harasser. This intervention can be a little bit risky, so use this one with caution, of course, and if you're confident enough to do this. But the most important thing is, like we already said, is document it. I can be really helpful to record an incident as it happens to someone, because if it's happening to someone, it can be very emotional, and you don't think at that moment to document everything. So a screenshot and helping your colleague to take also and document it with a screenshot, this will help over time. You can also delay, and even you can't act at the moment, you can make a difference for the person who has been bullied by checking on after the fact. And for example, if you document it, ask if they need something to report the incident. So overall, always think about safety and consider possibilities that are unlikely to put anyone else in harm's way. But also what we have to do outside of social media is addressing the workplace bullying. And I think the most important is to make a stand. So recommends need a multi-factor strategy to eliminate workplace bullying. And the first comment on this strategy is promoting and installing a culture of zero tolerance toward bullying. And clarity and on the recognition on what this toxic behavior has proven to be a major problem, it's also to reporting bullying incidents. So it's very important also to install education and communication about what is bullying, how to use the system, and where people can report. So only by following such a zero tolerance policy will support impactful and long-lasting steps to reduce these bullying incidences on the workplace. And this will create a culture that supports reporting also, so that people know they're doing the right thing and it's allowed by everybody. So it's not a blaming culture, but it's a reporting culture, so you can change things in a positive way. And it's important that people do report these incidences and also have feeling there is some feedback and they'll follow up on the whole process. So the first thing what we always can do, and it's something we're also doing in nursing, is preventing. And preventing the workplace bullying is like, for example, installing the zero tolerance in bullying actions are crucial. So, and we see this kind of, you can doing as, for example, like primary prevention is stopping bullying before it occurs, of course. And this is like, for example, you can develop education and other strategies like creating awareness, identify the risks on your ward, on the system, where bullying can exist or what could be potential triggers to do it. But we can also increase the buffers and reduce vulnerabilities in order to prevent this bullying. And this could be on two ways, like, for example, the employee strategies could be active participation in the development of workplace violence, bullying and violence prevention programs. And we can also see that the employer strategies is ongoing leadership in commitment and supporting and of this work environment, and to develop a comprehensive workplace bullying prevention program aligned with the strategy of the organization, for example. But there is also no time to waste when it's happening. And this is kind of a little bit like secondary prevention. And it's like an immediate and effective response to bullying. And it's an intervention to address, like, for example, the emergent short-time consequences and reduce the negative impact of bullying. And this could be like creating safety for the victim, but also maybe for the bully to create safety, that things are not getting out of hand, and take care of the short-term consequences for the person themselves, also for the team, but also for the organization, because that's also very important, and reduce the negative impact on the workplace bullying incident. Because if that's getting out of hand, this can have massive repercussions on the whole working place and environment. And of course, again, then it's important that we document also everything and make a good report and report the incident. And documentation is very important. We use the facts. Coming back to the facts is so important, to document this only and only that. I know this is also very emotional mostly if it's happening, but document the facts are very crucial. And then it's also some what we can do in the long term to respond. And it's something we can do is like, it's like the tertiary prevention is a long-term response to bullying. And these are interventions, it's like intended to reduce the long-term negative, and of course to initiate a rehabilitation process for the team and the persons themselves. So follow up on the victim, the bully, and the team. We can install workplace rehabilitation programs for this on bullying. We can reduce the long-term negative consequences for everybody that's involved. And of course, we have to analyze and evaluate the short-term and the long-term strategies we use to solve this problem. But I think overall, it's very important to stay communicating about the incident and to have communication strategies, transparency, and also increase the education if something happened on specific cases. I want to conclude here. I think the best way to build a safe and positive environment in healthcare is to create it together. And I think it's everybody's responsibility to take care of each other and be treating each other with respect. And in that way, that is why we can help stop bullying at the workplace and install these zero policies. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, we are happy to answer them.
So thank you, Johan, for your great presentation. Actually, we have here the third speaker, and we are welcoming Jill Morgan. Jill is a clinical oncologist originally from Texas, United States. However, he relocated to Sweden, where he's practicing medicine for about a decade, actually at the Skåne University Hospital in Lund. Main areas of interest are lung cancer, cancer prevention, and targeted therapeutics. He established OncoAlert network, which focuses on promoting quality oncology education, patients' needs and concerns, and the latest news in oncology. Jill, stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Michaela. Thank you very much for this wonderful invitation. And this is indeed a subject that really hits home. It hits home in many different levels, because quite honestly, not one of us that has gone through medicine. I mean, I can talk about medicine, and there's I don't think I know anyone that has gotten through a medical education without some sort of bullying along the lines. So this is something that has become the norm within healthcare, sadly, but it's something that I think should not be, not only because it's wrong, but also because it can actually lead to very, very serious results. So this is something that we not only have to stand up for bullying for ourselves, but also for others. Like I said, my name is Gilbert Morgan, and I work in Sweden. I am a clinical oncologist here. So I am going to, I'm not going to bore you too much, so I'm not going to read through the slides, but basically the definition of bullying is repeated unreasonable behavior directed towards someone that creates a risk for their health and safety. Now, if you look at the World Health Organization definition of health, it's actually a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So someone affecting mental health is actually affecting someone's overall health. So bullying is actually a threat to our health. So we have heard the many different types of bullying, and medicine is absolutely no different. The one thing that I have been a victim of plenty of times, and I think everybody has, and we don't, that's the sad thing, is we don't even see it as being victims of bullying because it's so common. And this is verbal abuse. And this is the kind that we see most in healthcare. It's unjustified, destructive criticism, sarcastic remarks, being shouted at. I mean, I can't even count how many times I've been shouted out by when I was a med student, or even when I was a resident. When maybe not here in Sweden, it's much better, but definitely going through my medical education, it was quite tough. Public humiliation in front of others, in front of your medical team, that makes you feel about this small. There's also social bullying, the spreading of rumors, embarrassing people with problems, embarrassing people in front of other people that are damaging their reputations. This is also something that is quite present in healthcare. Cyberbullying, now that we're talking about social media, and it's a completely different world nowadays. It's big, so is physical bullying, but seen less in healthcare. And the reason for this is because bullying is unlawful, and the people that are often doing the bullying know this. So these kind of bullying leaves a lot of witnesses, a lot of documentation that could identify that bullying. And this is the reason that we probably don't see it as much. However, when it comes to cyberbullying, it could also come in the form of purposely excluding people, whether it be excluding people from just a lesson or some sort of lecture, or even just excluding them from a formal gathering with colleagues. So who is doing the bullying? Bullying in medicine is as old as medicine itself. There's high rates of bullying and harassment of medical students, and most commonly, this is actually done by the consultants. But that's not where it stops. It's a whole line of hierarchy that it comes from the top, and it just passes on to the next and to the next to the next. But why does bullying happen in medical education? Medical training usually takes place in institutions that have a highly structured hierarchical systems, and it has traditionally involved teaching by intimidation and humiliation of the trainees. So this is the perfect environment for bullying. The bullying starts when you begin, and it gets lighter as you get further along in your education, but this is mostly because you eventually become the bully, and the cycle continues as new people come in. This is something that happens in our subconscious through displacement. Displacement entails the redirection of an impulse, usually aggression, onto a powerless substitute target. So this can operate in a chain reaction where people unwillingly or unwittingly become once victims and perpetrators of displacement. So to give you an example, this is when a resident gets demeaned by a superior. He or she takes it out on the med student. And of course, the med student goes out and meets a patient and sends it further to the patient. So this bullying order just keeps on going. The people at the top don't really see it because that pressure does not really fall on them, and it really affects those that are the most vulnerable. However, regardless of anything, bullying is against the law, and oftentimes bullies know this. So they use techniques to actually avoid the accountabilities. They will do things in private, and they will do that in a way that they are hard to prove. But just as it is important to report bullying as a victim, the same goes for bystanders and those working in an organization, such as managers, leaders, teachers, supervisors. We've been put in a position of trust and power, and we have to use that position in order to correct these injustices. So we must all be there to encourage individuals to speak up and report bullying and adapt to a culture where these offenses must be taken seriously, and there must be some sort of accountability. So there has to be open conversation and empowerment where victims feel like speaking up won't have a negative repercussion and it will lead to a positive change. So as far as doctors go, why do doctors put up with it? There are two overwhelming factors leading to this. The first one is fear. Getting into medical school is hard. Staying in was even harder. Once you graduate, this only gets tougher as the demands and the competition just gets tougher, and it's more evident. No one is willing to give up what they worked all their life for. So in situations where there is bullying by a senior, many do not report out of fear that it will impact what they have worked for all their lives. Culture, you have to toughen up. You are a doctor. This is expected of you. You should know this. These are all things that go through our heads because we have been fed all these things since we started down this path. Our medical culture has taught us that we actually believe it. So in order to get through medicine, you have to deal with the punches and you have to deal with the humiliation, with the grilling, and just somehow smile and come out okay on the other end. However, this is not the way things go. There are studies that have backed this up. So these are not just observations. In 1990, a study from JAMA showed mistreatment of med students. 46.4% of students at one medical school had been abused at some point during medical school. By the time that they were seniors, this number rose to 80.6%. Many studies have shown that physicians in general have high depression and suicide rates compared to people in many other lines of work. And this extends to other people working in healthcare. 40% higher for male physicians. And one thing that I found astounding was 130% higher for female physicians. So although we work in healthcare, we don't seek help as often as people not working in healthcare, because many might see this as weak. And we're very worried about the perception of others. In 2013, a study of doctors and medical students found that 20% had been diagnosed with depression and 25% had contemplated suicide, and 1 in 50 had actually attempted it. This same study saw that the main causes of bullying, around 65% of the doctors said, was because they were under extreme pressure, and 58% said that this was a challenge because the behavior was coming from the top. Half said that those who were bullied were actually afraid to speak up. So what do we blame this on? I can blame it on hierarchy, a culture of self-sacrifice, resilience, and difference that is found not only in medicine, but also in nursing and every other part of cancer care. These factors have created barriers that actually reporting mistreatment is a problem. As participants in this specific case felt like they were being labeled as troublemakers, and they don't want to really report anything because there's no real guarantee of confidentiality, and this is something that will negatively affect me. So if you can't make it and you're not tough enough to be in medicine, is something that we've been taught to believe that this is the truth, but it's something that is our job now as we go along, as we're making these rules, to tell people that, no, this is not the way it should be, and we need to fix things. So the results of bullying and mental health and learning, this is something that not only affects a person, but also the patients that are being treated. We're all part of a team. So when you're talking about a specific person, when that person is being bullied, that communication line breaks. So that cooperation that we use in order to provide healthcare to a patient all of a sudden is not there. People will seem unsatisfied and not wanting to do the work, and their productivity will not be the same. Their self-confidence will be affected, pushing them into depression, anxiety, quitting their job, and even death. So there was actually a study in 2014 in the UK to determine the extent of which undergraduate medical students experience bullying and harassment during their first year on full-time placements, and to compare them with the General Medical Council evidence on bullying and harassment of doctors in training. So within 8 months of starting clinical placement, a fifth of medical students and a quarter of nursing students reported experiencing bullying and harassment. Whereas some nursing students follow incidences with query and challenges, most medical students don't. They don't say anything. The study concluding that bullying and harassment of medical and nursing students, as well as witnessing such incidents, occurs as soon as the student enters the clinical environment. So what are we doing about it? In 2020, the American Medical Association adopted a new policy aimed at preventing bullying among healthcare professionals, providing a formal definition of workplace bullying, as well as guidelines for healthcare organizations to help healthcare organizations prevent workplace bullying. So the AMA's new policy offers the guidance that could be used to establish an effective workplace policy. And like I said here, it says that show the staff leadership is concerned about bullying. You have to define both the expected and the prohibited behavior. You have to have steps for the individual to take in order to report the bullying that is happening. Provide contact information for confidential means for documenting and reporting incidents. Prohibit retaliation and ensure privacy. And document training requirements and establish clear expectations about training objectives. So these unfortunately take time to implement, and the culture still has a big problem. However, there are some things that we can do to try to avoid it in the short term. Of course, these are not long-term things. You keep your distance from the aggressor. We're not alone in this, so you have to find a friend, and you have to have a friend not only to help you and support you, but also to help distract that bully from you, so that you stop being the only target. You have to make sure that you talk to someone, and of course someone who is in a position of power who can actually do something about it, and of course report this, because it's not going to go away on its own. As Johan said, documentation. Bullies know that this is illegal, and you need to have something on your corner to show that what is being done is actually bullying. Just don't be afraid, because this is something that has happened to all of us, but just because it happens to all of us does not mean that we have to put up with it. It's something that we as a medical society can change, but only if we actually speak up and if we actually trust in each other. Thank you. And if there are any questions, please feel free to send them over. And of course, I'm very easy to get a hold of, whether on my email or social media.
Thank you, Jill, for your great presentation and for your commitment to our webinar. I think that we have actually no questions in our chat box. Most of them are agreed with all what you said, both of you or three of you, and that we have to care not only for patients but also for our colleagues, because we are work team, and this great unit can't work if we will work together. So as we were talking on the beginning, we prepared the Mentimeter to share your opinions. So I will share my screen and we will see the results of Mentimeter. Do you see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
So the question one was, what do you imagine below the bullying? And as you see, there are so many opinion, certain with resign, more work than others, throwing others down, injustice, insecurity, ignorance, underestimated, arrogance, violence, and why, being mean, lack of cooperation, denying shift changes, lack of empathy. I'm just wondering that we as nurses are able to do this to another nurses or to live with these type of bullying. What do you think about it, Tolulope?
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
What do you think about the Mentimeter results if you see?
Okay, I think it actually perfectly describes what bullying is, because it's different things to different people and it comes to in different forms. So we're talking about harassment, violence, envy, being mean, being underestimated, arrogance, and all of that, insecurity. Yeah, it's really describes what we're talking about here.
Yeah. The other another question was, have you ever suffered by bullying at the ward? We had 4 nurses in our little number who were bullying in the past, and one who is still a victim of bullying. So you see that it is something what is so common, such in the hospital. Do you have something, somebody beside you who are, or who you think that he is suffered by bullying, Johan?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of people are suffering from bullying. If you see the numbers, everybody will encounter it sometimes. And even I can say I was encountered with bullying during my career. And when I look back to my career, it was not in the beginning, but in the middle. And then sometimes at this moment, you also encounter it in some ways. It's also not always severe, but it could be small things also. And people, for example, in team meetings, if people want to say something and people using eyes of non-verbal communication, it does something with people. You feel like more inconfident about doing things and to step up, and it has an impact on people. So these are little numbers, of course, and it's also showing maybe that it's not easy to stand up and come out of it, that you are experiencing bullying. But that's the whole point. I think we have to install a culture that people wants to stand up and can report these things, and they know that the organization or the system will handle it in a professional way, so we can eliminate it, hopefully in the future, bullying on the workplace, and create like a safe and safe, a physical and a psychological safe environment.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, Johan or Jill, maybe, what do you think? What is keeping person who is being bullied at her ward, at her unit? Why are they putting up to bullying?
Jill, if you want to go.
Yeah, that's one of the things we have to realize is that bullying is something that affects men and women, and there's different kinds of bullying. Sometimes it's as it was mentioned earlier, this can actually be whether it be sexual harassment, but it can also be gender harassment. This happens a lot in general. When it comes down to medicine, or when it comes down to, I mean, when I call it self-medicine, I say that's the nurses and doctors and everyone working in cancer care. I think that the reason that they put up with it is because we feel, I think we feel that we have not only a responsibility to the patient, but we have a responsibility to medicine, to this greater calling that we all answer to medicine and nursing, but this greater calling that we all answer to, that we feel like we need to just put up with things to the point that maybe we give too much of ourselves. And this is wrong, because we are people, we all deserve respect, and we deserve to do our job with love, but also in a way that we are appreciated. So if you're putting up with bullying, whether you're a nurse or a doctor or physiotherapy, whatever, it's something that you're not doing a favor, not only to yourself, but also to your colleagues, because this is something that the more that we take that as a norm, the more other people are going to also fall victims to, and the more that other people are not going to say anything about. So this is something that we need to bring it out in the open. So I'm very grateful that you had this wonderful discussion and this wonderful presentations, because it's something that we really have to come out as colleagues and say, this is wrong. This is something that we should not be putting up with. This is something that, most importantly, we have to stand up for each other, especially those that are actually in positions of power, people that are actually a little higher up in the ladder, people, the ones that are organized. Those are the ones that should be speaking and really being on the lookout and listening to the colleagues. Maybe that person will not come out and say, I'm being bullied, but a colleague can say, you know what, so-and-so is actually being bullied. And that person has to listen and go really take care of the problem.
Thank you.
And I also think why people doing it as bullying is also the fact they are maybe like still happening is jealousy, it's power, it's feeling intimidated, but also feeling not secure. Somebody that's bullying, sometimes it's because they don't feel secure, and maybe they feel like a pressure because you're new coming in, you have fresh ideas. And that is something where we see that sometimes happening also in nursing, that people start bullying because they feel threatened in a way that you're going to take something over, or they feel threatened in other ways. Maybe you do a research, you have published a paper, and that kind of things could also trigger bullying. And that's important to watch this and to discuss this and have policies on it and to work the way, of course.
I agree.
Yeah, and if we see what these victims of bullying are feeling, what feelings they have or they had, it's I'm not wondering that the percentage of some suicide thoughts and so on are so high, because these feelings like angry, unworthy, sad, depressed, who can take it for more than, for so a long time. Thank you, really thank you for your response to participants. I'm so sorry for the technical challenges with question 4 and finally the questions 5. Some tips how to defend. It's something what you, Johan and Jill and Tolulope told us: increase awareness, raise awareness, speak up, resilience, be proud and promote working together. And we have to care about ourselves, as I told, not only about patients. So thank you all for your responses.
Thank you very much. Thank you, speakers, and thank you, attendees, for coming to this webinar, because it's really important topic. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for asking questions, but as our speaker said, you feel free to contact them or us by emails. I would just like to announce our next webinar, Emergencies in Oncology Settings, which will take place on November 15th, also at 18 p.m. set. I will put your link in the chat box, and also the link will be on the EONS webpage. So thank you very much once more, and have a good night, good evening.